Hi everyone, in this video I just wanted to give kind of a quick walkthrough on our homework files here and show you guys just a few little tips and tricks and take a look at some of the problems. I'm not going to walk you through the answers to each one of these exercises from top to bottom necessarily, but just to kind of make sure that you're feeling comfortable with how to do inputs and all that kind of stuff. So to get started, super important, put your name in before you begin the assignment and save it down. Putting in your name here changes the numbers throughout the different exercises, and if you fail to put your name in or you put it in late, it changes the numbers later and your answers will all show up as incorrect at that point. So super important, that's why it's highlighted up here. Put your name in first, and that is the first step. Okay, so then you'll see exercise instructions. As you scroll through, hopefully you guys are pretty familiar with Excel, and if you've taken accounting 2, you've seen very similar type of spreadsheets like these. I know we use these in accounting 2 as well, with the red X's that go away when you get the right answer, so on and so forth. So yeah, so on some of these we're just going to be doing drop downs, and we're going to be inputting the categories, right? So we've got different product or period costs. You've got different selections for what type of categories they fall under. And so as you go through and pick out the answers that are correct, you'll see the red X's basically disappear as you go through, and then your score will update as well as the answers are input correctly. You start at 0% and then it'll work up. So hopefully that all kind of makes sense. It's relatively straightforward, I think, on these ones, and so this part of the exercise is just getting you familiar with categorizing the different costs. And then it's a very similar thing. You've got some of these exercises down here that are really asking you to just kind of like recreate the formulas to how to get things like the direct materials. So if we go through and make our selections, and one thing to note here is that, at least on my computer, and I'm assuming this is the same for everyone, the little scroll wheel on your mouse does not move this up and down the selection screen. And there are additional selections that are below the, when you first just select the drop-down menu. So, but do you see how to get there? You have to actually click on the scroll bar here on the right side, and you can scroll that up and down to find the additional selections, essentially. So as we go through and answer these questions, you can see the little, beginning plus the purchases equals the subtotal minus, the ending raw materials equals direct materials used. So hopefully that makes sense, and I'll let you all work through the rest of those. But as you can see, the red X's continue to disappear. The score is increasing as we go. And yeah, so then you'll complete all the exercises on tab 1. Click through to the second tab, which is exercise 6 here in this part. And you'll notice, like I mentioned here, the numbers that will change with the name when you input. So be careful on that. But then here's a whole listing of categories, and then amounts, etc. And so as we go through, and you kind of have a mixed bag of having drop-down menus, and then you'll also have the ability just to type directly into some of the boxes when you need to input your amounts. So let's just take a quick look and do that together real briefly. So again, if we want to calculate our direct materials, and again, you've got the little scroll wheel on the side here. So you just want to, you go through and find the correct category. So we're really just kind of recreating the formulas here. This one doesn't necessarily have the plus, minus, equal, all that stuff. So just keep that in mind that, this is kind of you're creating the formula here, just using your knowledge. Refer to the book and the notes and everything else that you have to be able to complete these formulas. And as always, I'm happy, if you have questions as you're going through this and just totally getting stumped, reach out. I pride myself on being quick to respond for student requests, etc. So use me as a resource too, please. Okay, so now you've got kind of the drop-down categories over here. This column is going to include the totals for those categories. So for example, if we have beginning raw materials inventory, $24 there. So we'll put that in, and you can see the red X's go away. Raw material purchases, we've got 192. And you can basically just input that just from the keyboard. No, it's not a drop down, etc. And then one thing I wanted to highlight for you guys too is you can, what I highly suggest is you can use the Excel formulas. So you can, just hopefully you're familiar with Excel, but using a formula that you can see here equals, and select that cell E17, just like you would with a normal Excel spreadsheet. And then you can select the second cell there that you want to do your formula in, and you can see that it's just summarizing those. So you don't have to be confined to just manually typing in the answers there. So that is helpful, I think, for going through and being able to I highly suggest the least amount of manually hard keying numbers in and doing calculations, like let Excel do the calculations for you. That's very important. It allows you to come back and see what is being calculated. If you do your calculation on a calculator or something outside of Excel and type the answer in, it's a real hindrance to later coming back and seeing how you arrived at that answer. So the right way to use Excel is basically to use it to do the calculation. So learn how to do your formulas if you're not familiar with that already. Super important. And ask me if you have any Excel questions. I'm happy to help out with any kind of Excel questions. I'm pretty good. I spent my whole career basically in it all day long. So okay, so back to the problem here. So we just typing in our answers as we go. So here's the categories, here's the amounts, and then here we can kind of see it carries over, and we want to say direct materials used. So then again, let's use our formulas, and we're going to say our raw materials available minus what's in the ending balance, which will show on the balance sheet. And so our direct materials used will be 186, and that's again doing a little formula there. So take advantage of the formulas. Let's take a look. So as far as direct labor goes, we've got salaries in different categories here, and we've got managers, office manager, and we've got assembly workers. And so the only ones that fall into the direct labor category are the assembly workers specifically. And then we've got manufacturing overhead. So in this part, you're going to just go through. Again, it's a drop-down selection. So go through and find the categories that make up all of the types of overhead used in the factory. Things like depreciation for the factory equipment, factory supplies used, and just go down the list. Advertising expense would not fall into that category, right? That's outside the selling expense. It's not a production expense. And so here's a good example too. So janitorial costs for the office are not going to fall into our manufacturing overhead, but the janitorial costs for factory will. And I believe, let me confirm. Okay, let's see if we insurance costs for the factory. So I don't think, as I'm going through, I don't think this has to be exactly in order as it is listed up here, but watch out for that. And so the goal here is to go through and pick out all of your categories that make sense there. And then, just like we've been doing, you're going to go in and say depreciation factory equipment, $72, work through the red X's. And then when you get down to the ending, you can do your Excel formula here. There's different ways to, do this, obviously. That's kind of the most simplistic, equals this cell plus this cell plus this cell, so on and so forth. Another way is just to say equals sum. So you can do a addition summation formula there and drag over the whole list. And so if you get that formula input, then as you go through, your numbers will update automatically. And when you get all of the inputs done, and this number does equal the total, you'll see your red X go away automatically, basically, because you put in the totals, or the formula. Sorry. So I'll let you work on that, but that will update automatically. And so I just wanted to highlight that this is how, in case you guys were getting confused about the 3 columns, etc., that this is the summation. And so kind of follow this over so you can sort of see here, okay, this is direct materials used, this is direct labor. So hopefully that helps you kind of navigate. As far as our income statement, or our partial income statement here, we're going to have, again, just kind of follow this over. So sales 960 shows us up here, and then you're going to go through and calculate out your cost of goods sold. And so the information that you need to complete your cost of goods sold is going to be what you're pulling off your manufacturing schedule above. And some of it will be directly off of the numbers above, but some of it will be, what you're pulling in is cost of goods manufactured. Basically, as you calculate that down, will get pulled into this column. You can even link if you want to, which again would be kind of the correct way to use Excel. You could link this total up to your cost of goods manufactured total. It shows a 0 right now because you haven't finished all the rest of the work above. But if you finish the work above and do it correctly, then this will automatically update as you linked it in Excel, and then your red X there will go away as well. And then you've got your totals here, you've got your calculations, and then again you can set up, if you know your formulas, you can do it at the end when you finish too, but it definitely is one way to kind of go through and put the formula. You can even put the formulas in first, just to sort of have that input for when you put the rest of it in. So it kind of depends on how you want to do this, but all I really want to communicate is definitely utilize Excel as much as you can. It saves you from making mistakes and allows you to better understand the formulas as well when you look back and say, okay, if I'm getting cost of goods sold, I'm going to want to take my finished goods available minus what's left in inventory on the balance sheet. And then our gross profit, is all these are formulas are going to be our sales minus our cost of goods sold. And like I said, for now, these red X's aren't going away just because we haven't finished the rest of the problems. But once we do finish those and you have your Excel linking input, they'll automatically update and you'll get those X's to go away. And then again, we can look back. You can see our score is continuing to increase as we complete different sections of the problems. And this is, pretty, so hopefully at this point you're getting comfortable with all the pieces and the different navigational techniques, using Excel throughout these, using the formulas, I think is really important. The rest of these problems are pretty straightforward. Let's see. Here's something to highlight. So I'll let you guys work on this, finish these out. One thing to note, though, on this problem, and I suppose the one above it as well, you can't specifically link to these numbers above. So you will have to type in, like where it says direct materials 180, you will have to type those in. Now, like I mentioned, you can do formulas between the amounts in these cells here, but you can't specifically link back to the instructional, kind of the reference thing at the top. So those are connected, behind the scenes, and update when you put your name, all that kind of stuff. So your part that you can work in are just the kind of yellowish highlighted cells here. But you can link between them, as you've seen us do. We've been doing. So again, like on this problem, if you're trying to figure out, direct materials used, you can't exactly click into this plus this minus this necessarily. So there are certain instances where you sort of have to hard key it, if you will. But what I would recommend even when you're doing that is to use Excel to your benefit. I mean, you're still typing the numbers in, you're not linking to different cells above. But like, for example, in this problem, if we want beginning raw materials plus our raw material purchases, so 70 plus 105, and we want to subtract ending raw materials, that allows us, so leave yourself a trail is kind of how I would describe that. Instead of just doing this work separately on a calculator and seeing that it's 140 and you just type 140 in, it's a much better Excel technique to actually put your calculations. You let Excel, be your calculator basically. But also just putting an equal sign and then putting the formula in here allows you to be able to come back later and see exactly what you did, what you were subtracting and adding. So that's just good Excel technique overall. So be sure you kind of use that. That'll help you as well. Yeah, nothing too crazy, I think, on these rest of these problems. Very similar type of thing. If we're talking about I'll do this one with you real quick, just for the heck of it. So guide company's cost of goods sold. So we have beginning, and again, I'll do my equal sign. We had 6 to start. We added 44, and we added 10 to end in our ending inventory. And so again, you can see I've got my Excel formula in there. And then for the gal company, we had 16 in finished goods inventory. We manufactured 72 of cost of goods manufactured, and we have 8 left on the balance sheet. And so then if we're looking to see which must be manufacturer, that's going to be the one. See, this is a merchandiser who has merchandise inventory versus gal company who has manufacturing happening, essentially. So